Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Agasicles and DBq from the Rounding Off Affinity Gaming channel on YouTube, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch, back with another episode of the Enough to Keep Going weekly games podcast, Grown Ups Who Game. Tonight we're into our deep dive format, so we'll be talking about news and goings on in the gaming industry. But the only thing which is really of major import today was the Sony PlayStation 5 reveal event. Here with me, as is typically the case, is my good partner in arms, DBQ Hams. How you doing, DBQ?
Way to bring the energy tonight. That is excellent. That's what we need for this would be our normal E3 kind of ratcheting up, and this time we would have gone through kind of the wrap ups of our E3, and so now we're just kind of launching into some of these announcements. So I am glad to be here with you because we've got plenty to talk about, and whether it's good or bad or indifferent, there is plenty for us to chew on and digest. So
So away we go. And of course, I couldn't make things easy, so I'm on a completely new streaming and recording setup. So I hope, fingers crossed, that we maintain. Things seem to be going okay so far after a stuttered start. This is our second attempt this evening. So obviously, today we had the Sony PlayStation 5 reveal event. Um, we're going to go ahead and talk through it in, I think, mostly no, not entirely chronological order, but a little bit in chronological order. DBQ did the script, so thank you very much again, DBQ.
yeah, I think we'll most of the games are in chronological, but why bury the lead? So
yes, right. So, yeah, very, yeah, very. I don't know what the right word is to describe. So originally, I had planned on doing the script. I was just going to go through in chronological order. I got jammed trying to bring all this hardware together. DBQ stepped in and did the script at the last minute, so he moved the console design discussion up front. So this is an interesting take this week. Two SKUs, DBQ. So now we have the company that was purported that go two SKUs having yet only revealed one, with Microsoft having only revealed the Xbox Series X. They're on two SKUs this generation, well, three or four SKUs if you include all told. Um, Next generation, right now, as of right now, they're on one SKU. Today, PlayStation dropped the bomb that they have two. Surprisingly, it amazingly parrots the Xbox One and the Xbox One S configuration from this generation. In fact, it is virtually a copy. I think it's actually called the digital. It's called the digital edition versus the digital only edition, but it's the
yep,
same
it's
thing,
basically the same thing. Yep,
right?
exactly.
I will say, for my part, breathtaking take on hardware design. I really expected just kind of the standard straight stick. It definitely feels like a leap forward into the next generation with the high curvature of the design. What was your personal take on it?
Yeah, I was really breathtaking was a good word, right? This really felt it felt high end consumer design. Like this was aesthetically very. I find it very pleasing, right? I've seen a variety of comments online. Granted, yes, I can see where it also kind of looks like a router with the blue and the white glowing, but I really think it is really impressive. I mean, it stands out. It's even more impressive to me when you set those two boxes together in terms of the Series X kind of monolith of a computer and this kind of sleek uh, showpiece of platform design. I'm trying to think of what the kind of industrial design, right? That's kind of where we're at here. So yeah, I was surprised as well about the diskless system, the digital system. I think that is a logical take. It makes it interesting because what we don't know in terms of what types of backwards compatibility the PlayStation will have. We know that they have been kind of non-committal with the Mark Cerny talk this spring about the top 100 games. Sony has come out the past couple weeks and said that anything rated after July, from July moving forward, is going to have to play on both. So we know that there's going to be some type of compatibility. So it'll be interesting to see, and that may be some of that compatibility may also factor into where people land on the disc or discless. I think aesthetically the discless is obviously symmetrical, and but the thing and I'm curious on your take on this is what's the price point difference? Is there a difference? Is there, uh, or do they change kind of hard drive sizes so it ends up being the same? What's your take on where those things land?
So it's interesting to consider that they would alter the size of the hard drive. Of course, there was a potential leak earlier this week that Amazon UK had leaked a 2 terabyte SKU for the PlayStation 5. So it might be interesting to have a 1 terabyte PlayStation 5 with disc and a 2 terabyte PlayStation 5 without disc. Now, that logic would stand if you had the logic the, that you know you would have the option to play from a disc.
Right, which doesn't actually exist,
Right, which we were
even in
all led
this
to believe
generation.
last
Yeah,
generation. But as I discovered, even as far back as the PlayStation 3, like one of the things that frequently frustrated the heck out of me was the fact that at some point during that generation, like whenever you put a disc in and told it to play, it automatically installed. You were given no choice and no option. So I don't know that the hard drive differentiation between the two would natively yield a price differential. Um, if I mean it's not like the Nintendo Switch where you can go digital, but the negative impact of that is that you take up more of your limited drive space. Whereas on Nintendo Switch, right when I had one, I would deliberately go after physical copies because the boon was that it didn't take up storage space. So, man, that's a tough thing to to imagine or take on. I really don't understand. Having built a few PCs in the last few weeks, like I really it escapes me that I mean so now I'm having a hard time not having pulled the thread on these before. So these are I can't remember if these are NVMe PCIe drives or 2.5 inch SATA SSDs. I can't remember.
yeah, I don't
They're okay.
remember
So
either.
now I do. So no, the Xbox they are both NVMe, I believe PCIe drives because the whole thing about the PlayStation said claim that their struggle was that there is no standardized size for that's right because they're Generation
Yes,
4
yep,
PCIe drives.
yep.
Okay, so
You're right.
so that yeah, I so a 2 terabyte PCIe drive is a pretty stiff price point right now. I mean, even before the health crisis, they were running probably about 250 to 300. So it's a stiff price. Of course, you buy those in bulk, you get a better price cut. But I mean, that being said, I would personally find anything less than 2 terabytes in either the Series X or either one of the PlayStation 5 SKUs to be criminal because like 1 terabyte, is gone in like the first 10 games. So um, it'll be interesting. I guess one of my things what too was, I mean, I hoped above all hopes, although I doubt that it's the case, that they showed their lineup of launch accessories as well, which included a pair of headphones at least. I don't know if was the Pulse a headset.
Yeah, the Pulse is a headset.
Okay,
Yep.
so of
So
course
yep.
the historic problem with the PlayStation platform has been since PlayStation 3 there was no real packed-in headset. Unlike on the Xbox, there was a packed-in headset. It kind on the Xbox 360, I felt like it kind of led to a vast cultural difference between players on Xbox Live versus players on PSN. Everybody on Xbox Live had a headset. No one on PSN had a headset because no one would buy the console and then go buy a secondary headset. And when I say no one, I
So
mean
the
like the normals or the bulk of the
so the
population.
the Pulse is a separate purchase. Like the
Okay,
Sony headset that was in the stream. My understanding is that those were the accessories that were all separate purchases. I mean, obviously, except for the DualSense.
and that's what I
So
figured.
yeah,
What I was saying was I hoped above hope. I was like that would be an incredible value if those things were packed in. Like I really don't understand at this point why the consoles don't pack in the media controller because given the limited, like I often would boot my console up, and I might be dorking around for 15 or 20 minutes before I actually started gaming, and during that time I would use my remote because I wouldn't want to burn battery power on my controller. So um, and then I saw a charging stand out of the gate, which is kind of a new one for PlayStation. So there was the charging stand, the media headset, the charging stand, media road, pulse headset. Was there anything else? I thought there was a fourth.
I
Oh,
think it
the
was just
camera.
oh yeah, the camera. Yep,
Okay, and that was a
yep.
separate purchase as well. You believe?
That was a separate purchase. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So I mean, we'll see. I don't know about. I mean, as we've proven, as I think we have to accept now as proof, price is king, right? Whoever comes in at $3.99 is going to win it because gamers are just in a world that has become ruled by the free to play game model. Like there are lots of people who only play free to play games. Like they never buy new games. Like they only pay, and even then, I mean, even when they buy games, they only pay like when they are in like that discount bin at GameSpot. Um, so
Do you think that any of these come in at a 399 price point?
oh man, I think one of them has to. Like I mean, so we've got the health crisis going on. We're going to talk a lot about uncertainty as we go through this podcast. We've got the health crisis going on. We've got vast uncertainty about like when these consoles are landing, vast uncertainty about like physical copies, people gearing up for the notion that they may only be able to truly buy digitally, et cetera, et cetera. Like I don't know how you put people in isolation and you tell them like your next console upgrade is a 499 or 59. I mean, if we go back to the $600 model of the PlayStation 3 era, like I think that's a non-starter.
No, I mean, right? It's not only the health crisis, but it's the political crisis. It's the economic crisis. I mean, there's a knock-on effect on a number of things going on that for a consumer good item, uh, this, I think you're right. Price will be king, or the supply is going to be so low that price won't matter because they can only keep enough in the channel for the the hardcore early adopters, and they'll both platforms will discount heavily to try to get people into those infrastructures.
Right? It's like I don't envy them this problem. Right? They're launching a console in a major recession in an election year. Right? Like I mean, there's like unemployment is the highest it's ever been, right? So and you're turning to the world telling them we're launching new consoles and we're launching like the highest performing specialist sauce right that we've ever launched. Like I just man, that's a tough hard case. So why don't we go ahead and talk about that uncertainty, in terms of release dates as we go through these games. Like this is one of the things that I found it's there, and so I'm viewing this through two lenses. One of those lenses is this is the world as it is today, and so some things have to be accepted. And I'm thinking about, but how would I be viewing this if things were the old normal, right? And under the old normal, I would have been very dissatisfied with this news conference because there weren't launch dates, and the launch
You got some.
you got some they were
You
very
got Windows. You got Windows for
yes.
everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And they were
Yep.
very sporadic and they were nonsensical like throughout the like you would get one with no launch date, you would get one with 2021, you would get one with 2023, you would get no launch date again, right? So like and there was no pattern between no readily discernible pattern between like their exclusive titles have launch dates, the non like you know it's all over the place. So
No, I think you're absolutely right because what it ends up doing is it's Sony trying to sell you on the potential of the system and not necessarily on what you're going to be able to pick up this fall because they certainly I mean they're of the things that had a 2020 launch date, it is not huge in terms of what they showed today. I mean, this is obviously not the only things that will come out within that window. I'm sure Ubisoft will have something within that window because it's Ubisoft.
I mean
But
there were no Ubisoft games shown today, right?
no, but they've got their own stuff coming up as
Yeah.
well. They've got a showcase as well.
Yeah. but again, with that dual lens perspective, right? Typically, we are accustomed to seeing a major Sony launch game on both console stages, during what would normally have been E3. So that just struck me as amazingly a miss. So let's go ahead and start running down through the games a little. I'm gonna try to stick with your script, but I may skew at one point or another. One of those skews right off the bat is GTA 5. So it started the press conference, which I thought was highly unusual. Until we got some of the stuff after the sizzle reel. One of probably the major thing out of it was that people who buy PlayStation 5 are going to get the game free. So at launch. And so, what is interesting about that is it feels kind of like the new pack-in, right? Like it's
I was
now a
thinking the same
digital
thing. Like,
pack-in.
this is the pack in. Um, and it's also the case, wasn't it also the case that if you have it on PlayStation 4, not only will it upgrade, but then you're going to be getting V Bucks or Shark Bucks or
Yeah,
whatever it is.
$1 million
Yeah,
of in-game currency every month until launch. Now, what that tells me is number one, it can be looked at as a way to grease the skids for let's get all the GTA owners in, which is a large number of PlayStation owners. But then it also was like a kick out, right? Like, hey, if I don't launch the PlayStation 5 on time, I expect all you GTA players to not bother me because I'm giving you $1 million of in-game currency every month. So lots of them will go, there's a 3 month delay, no big deal because I'm getting in-game currency. So that made me, and again, this theme of like throughout the conference where like you feel confident. You see a 2020 release date. I mean, it was several games before we saw a 2020 release date, I think. And when I saw it, I was like, "Oh yes, that's the first like confirmation that the thing's coming this year." But then you get things like this, and they're definitely hedging their bets.
I agree that I was like, this is what they're leading with. But I think exactly what you said earlier in the show about so many people only do free to play, and so suddenly GTA, which is always one, one of the biggest selling video games of all time, uh, is is now basically free to play for launch window owners of this new console. And so for those people that you were talking about, there's a little more incentive like, oh, well, I don't necessarily have to buy a whole bunch of other games because I've got this one that I can live in for a long time.
No, it's good. I mean, I mean, Rockstar hasn't gone full hog as calling Grand Theft Auto 5 like an MMO, but if you accept it as such, right, you kind of go, this is a game that has a local single player story campaign which will occupy a person. I mean, with side missions included, you're talking about over 100 hours of gameplay easily. Then it's got an online component, a huge rich community. Um, I don't know. So what's weird on PC? There's this whole like role play scene in GTA 5, and I don't know if you can get into that from a console because they're on separate servers. So, but there might be that. So it was a weird thing to open with, as Osiris Prime today mentioned in our Discord chat. And then I said, well, but it's free, so um, it gave me the sense that the beginning was kind of going to be sequel palooza, which to a certain extent it was. I would say at the 60th, 70th percentile, but then those things are confidence builders, right? As far as things that are there are things that are going to be there pretty soon. Um,
Well, I think that they're not only
yeah, go ahead.
confidence builders, but they're reference points as well, right? Like, oh, I know what this looked like on PlayStation 4. Here's what it looks like now. I can see that, and a couple of these games that we're going to talk about will certainly do that.
Right.
The next game is a holiday 2021. It does have a release date. It does well, at least has a release window, and this is Spider-Man Miles Morales by Insomniac. The follow-up. It sounds kind of similar to the infamous Second Son, infamous Lost Light, kind of not a full or kind of the Uncharted. Um, what was the follow up, the Lost Legacy, something like that. It was a 10 to 20-hour game versus a 30 to 40
You,
hour game
you
type of
call it
thing.
Wolfenstein Youngblood.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
So, I actually, so as of right now, again, I've transitioned, or am trying to transition as best as I can to becoming a PC only player, just because it's less stuff to keep up with and less anxiety and guilt about like, things that I own collecting dust. Um, this is one that definitely kind of hit me right in the chin that I was like, I might go back. This might pull me over, and the reason is because for years, right, wrong, or indifferent, like me or hate me, I don't really care. I have felt like, look, I grew up with Peter Parker's story, um, but I also kind of grew out of it. Like, Peter Parker's story was a thing until I kind of matched his age and like came into my own, and then like the thought of somebody youthful coming out of high school, like getting beat up by the bully, and then learning to pay their bills. Again, like the stories that are told about Peter Parker now, where he's like the CEO of like it's like he he went past an age of my life and flew into like the fantastical that I'm not, and so that story has lost a lot of relevance for me. The Miles Morales story is hugely relevant, and I've been a large proponent for a very long time that is the more important story for Marvel to tell. They need to look, and I can't remember the guy's name now, but the British guy Todd, who's the new
Oh,
Spider-Man.
Holland.
Tom
Tom
Holland,
Holland.
yes, right. Like I love him. He's a great actor. He gets Peter Parker. I mean, square bullseye, right on point. I still feel like the Miles Morales story is more relevant. This is now, after they've done the animated movie, now they're bringing him to video games. It's probably the largest presentation of Miles Morales to the general public that there has ever been. Um, I hate to be in a position to not support it. So I like I this was the point, and of course we're all on lockdown, so I'm watching this at home. This is the point of the press conference where I stood up and was clapping, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, this is the point where I was still on a call from work, and my son came running into my room, like pumping his fist, all excited about Spider-Man and Miles Morales. And I completely agree. I mean, Miles has and his the story that they told within Into the Spider-Verse, is a really good representation. There is a really interesting and valuable story to tell there of that coming of age of multiple different, I think you're right. Like Peter Parker, we know where that arc goes, and as they try to reboot that, it loses some of its steam. And this is from somebody who still kind of reads Spider-Man. But I think this has they did the Peter Parker story. They can do the Miles Morales one, and then the next Spider-Man one, can weave them together in something that's creative and new as well.
Right. I also want to kind of briefly address, just chronologically going through the press conference, that it was Jim Ryan who finally, not finally, but kind of came to the fore, and was the keynote speaker, if you will, during the press conference. It's been very mystified, unless you are deep dyed in the wool and keep up with this stuff all the time like we do. It's been very unclear who really is the head of Sony, since the transition out of Sean Layton. We've heard more and more from Jim Ryan as the voice of Sony, through press releases and sound bites. So if you weren't clear, I mean, you should be clear now. Jim Ryan is running the PlayStation division, as far as we can tell. He had been very vocal in the past about the launch strategies and the way the PlayStation business ran. In several cases, was in opposition to the way Sean Layton was heading. Was against the whole, surprisingly enough, was against the whole two SKU approach, during generation. Am I messing this up?
The
Six,
last
seven?
generation,
Yes,
yeah.
last generation. I try to be specific with numbers, but I'm losing sight of that a little bit as we move on. But yeah, was very resistant to the whole $600 price tag, on the PlayStation 3. Has been very insistent that this be a global launch and that it not be staggered. He felt it was very important for PlayStation to remain as a community and not to split everyone up. So very interesting to see him come to the fore. Again, it's kind of the keynote speaker for this. After the Miles Morales reveal, of course, Miles Morales being done by Insomniac, who is now owned by Sony. So the Miles Morales title. a Spider-Man title wasn't a surprise. The fact that it was Miles Morales was very surprising, and very endearing as well. Next up, after that, should have been no surprise, was Gran Turismo. Um, I would claim that pretty much the last iterations of Gran Turismo, the last two, have been pretty bad. And I continuously ask the question. I don't understand how these guys get away with it. You know, the studio has put out two mediocre games and they put them out like one every 10 years. That's an exaggeration. And in the meantime, there are like four iterations of Forza. I don't understand. However, they are back at it again. I will say the things that I heard today were very encouraging, being a racing game fan. The guy, I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, but was very clear on emphasizing that the focus of this game was a return to focusing on the campaign mode, which has been the bane of Gran Turismo since Gran Turismo 6, I would say. Um, it was about. I guess I would maybe go back as far as 5. 5, which I think was the first iteration on the PlayStation 3, and then 6 ridiculously launched like right as the PlayStation 3 was being like after the PlayStation 4 had been released. And I get this chronology a little messed up, but I think 5 was the one that like the campaign mode was so convoluted that it had just gotten ridiculous of how to progress through the game. And then 6 was overshadowed by the PlayStation 4 launch. 5, which was it?
5 had a prelude as well, right? Like early in the
Right, right, right,
PlayStation 3 generation, we
right.
got
Okay.
the prelude because they couldn't ship it. I mean, right? Same thing like with GT Sport for PlayStation 4. I mean, they finally got something out, but I mean, they've been adding to it over the last 2 years, and actually, right now, after 2 or 3 major updates, there's a lot of content to it. I revisited it in VR a couple of months ago. But again, this is 2 years after release, so
Yeah.
they struggle shipping and they struggle kind of having something that's a complete package.
Right. So, and I think I was as I started calling it Gran Turismo 5, I started to confuse myself because of course the new release is Gran Turismo 7. Now that's because the last release wasn't actually a numerical Gran Turismo release. It was Gran Turismo Online or whatever it's called,
Sport. Yep.
Sport.
Yeah.
But I take that back. So I take that they've actually released three that have kind of been stinkers, or at least as far as I'm concerned, they have not been as good and as straightforward as Forza. As particularly as the Forza Horizon series has climbed to higher and higher accolades. And the big problem has been it's been so convoluted. And as DBQ mentioned, very troubled release cycle on 5. It was Prelude, the Prelude, which still wasn't the complete game, right? And then finally the release, and by then people had gotten tired of it. And then 6, launched with a whimper. Online has been, as far as I'm concerned, is almost non-existent. I monitored it through release, but it just came out like another dud, like the previous iterations had been. Um, and I didn't even bother paying attention because I was so happy with Forza. So it'll be interesting to see. It looks gorgeous, and I think at that point, um, so Miles Morales had a release date.
Yeah, they gave Holiday 2020 at the end of the trailer.
Okay, as far as I remember, Gran Turismo did not.
No.
So yet again, we have the flagship racing game on the Sony flagship platform, not committing to whenever they are going to get around to releasing the game. So now at this point in the press conference, the thing that was really hitting me was, and this is a steady theme throughout the conference, at no point did I see anything from this conference or during these games that said anything to me, why PlayStation 5, right? Like, all the games looked good, and looked better, but, nothing, like, nothing came to me as, like, until the hardware reveal of, like, these could have easily been just better looking PlayStation 4 games. Um, and
I mean, these are beautiful looking games.
yeah,
I mean, even on the stream that I was watching, they look amazing.
right. But
But
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, but yeah, I mean, I think uh, it, I think the hard part is I don't know that they showed anything that felt like it other than visual and a couple of their audio kind of soundscapes that they played around with that they encourage you to wear headphones for. I don't. It's hard to say that there's technologically, in terms of gameplay or mechanics, anything that really pushes those boundaries. I mean, they did talk about Insomniac comes back out and talks about Ratchet and Clank and the rifts and being able to jump back and forth, and which is interesting, but at the same time, that's I don't know. I mean, that's a matter of the hard drive that they're pulling it off of. It's I don't know that they didn't show anything that made it seem really pushing those boundaries.
I mean, one of the things that has bothered me, and this is as a techie, so I guess it, obviously doesn't bother 100 million people who bought the console. I bought the console too, but it bothers me from the aspect of the people who jump up and down and claim that Sony won E3. I'm like, to me, they do a very bad job of messaging. Like, it is never clear to me what the point of a thing is. It's not always clear to me like what their strategy is, or like, I think there are real things in terms of the technical implementation of the PlayStation 5 that make it good for developers. But all I got today, you know, and overall, I do feel like this was a better event than Xbox's most recent event. You didn't have people at home, like they clearly sent everybody green screens or at least backdrops or edited them into a black backdrop or whatever. So it wasn't a guy in his kitchen, doing a press conference. Um, but what I will say about Xbox is, even though Swiss mentioned that he didn't like it, I always love to hear from the developers and what they're actually going through and implementing. And the Xbox event had a whole back 10 to 20 minutes of just the developers talking. Sony didn't do that, and so all I felt like I heard from the handful of creative directors that came through was a bunch of rah rah about like the PlayStation 5 enables us to do more than we ever did before. It would have been, I felt like, really enlightening to hear from the big thing about the Xbox and PlayStation 5 supposedly is that there is so much automation there in terms of development that a small studio will be able to make something that looks like a AAA game. I would have loved to hear more of that soundtrack, but we didn't really hear it today. As DBQ mentioned, next up was Ratchet and Clank, which was very encouraging, very nostalgic, good piece of comfort food. What I found most impressive about this is the fact that they, having recently been acquired by Sony, is that they have both games in production concurrently. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about Ratchet and
No, I
Clank?
mean it's Ratchet and Clank is comfort food's a good explanation there. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah. No, go ahead.
well, I was just going to make the transition from comfort food to phantom food,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
the Square Enix continual target renders of things, which is Project Athia. No date here. We also got some really beautiful Square Enix, you know, uh, CGI graphics, the last generation that never manifested in the game. So whether this becomes a game or not, but it is headed up. It's Illuminous Studios. It's headed up by uh, the director of Final Fantasy VII or Final Fantasy 15 before he left the studio. So it's one of their sub studios within there. Striking again, beautiful, but you know, hard to see gameplay in that as well.
Yeah, and talking about the theming and pacing of the show, first new IP that was presented in the show. Next up was thank you for the correction, Stray. What? I,
That that's not a correction. Stray is the name of the game.
okay, all
My
right,
my snarky labeling of
all right.
it
With
is
Cat
it's
Stranding.
Cat Stranding, right? I mean, and I'll give credit to my younger son who said this, as he's watching it and snarking about it. But basically, I mean, the demo is like, I mean, the sizzle reel was this cat kind of wandering through a cyberpunk landscape, um, and it is about the cat. We don't really know much else besides that.
All right. So at this point in the press conference, too, everything other than Miles Morales was a 2021 release date, as far as I understand.
If they had a date,
Right,
yeah.
right. Um, Returnal. Do you want to talk a little bit about that one?
Sure, Returnal, a sci-fi kind of. At first, it kind of looks a little exploration-y, and then it kind of got into a third-person action kind of action character game. But it sounds like it's going to be almost like a roguelike. They have the character saying she needs to break the cycle before the cycle breaks her. So
Yeah, this is
what that game looks like. Yeah, go ahead.
the first of two time loop games that were
Yes,
presented at this conference,
yes, yep, very
which
much so.
which gave me misgivings, particularly more so with this one than with Deathloop, which we'll talk about later. Um, as they were going through the presentation of this game, I got very excited because, of course, it's sci-fi, which I really like. It looked gorgeous, uh, but it came off like a locked room episode of like a sci-fi show of like Stargate or something like that, where like the
See, and that part was actually really interesting until it showed me the gameplay of like, oh, this is just a third person action shooter about a screen full of alien orbs that I'm shooting.
Well, I actually got really excited when I saw the shooting. I wrote "shooty shooty pew pew." I was like, because that's what would have excited me about a sci-fi game. I was like, but I don't want to play a sci-fi walking simulator that is Edith Finch in space, right? So that's what it started to feel like to me. So it'll be very interesting to see how it turns out. Um, Sackboy.
Yeah, we get a Sackboy 3D adventure, Sackboy Big Adventure. It looks like a 3D platformer. It's by Sumo Digital, who's been, they've been doing a number of other things. They did one of the Sonic racing games lately. Sumo Digital was also doing, they helped with uh, Disney Infinity in the last interaction with that. And so they've got some kind of good 3D, exploration chops. But it looks cute if you like Sackboy. It may control like Sackboy, which may make you not like it. But yeah, we can kind of jump through a quick some of these relatively quickly if you want as well.
Yeah, just a quick note on Sackboy is it came off to me as like their Mario, their Super Mario, and definitely. I mean, I will say throughout the conference, what I really like about it's questionable whether or not you refer to this as their launch lineup because clearly it's not just their launch lineup. Um, uh, but what I will say about Sony is they do a good job of pacing and theming and mixing up and showing to people that there are multiple genre games, multiple play styles coming in I hate to say relatively short order when one of the dates that we saw was 2023. But there's a little bit there for everybody from the hardcore to the casuals.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. That was kind of my thought as well. Of it's selling it to a family, right?
yep.
Like even if it's not within a launch window, it's that saying that this is a box that's going to have something for everybody.
Right. So yeah, I get you that you want to kind of motor through some of the maybe arguably less important titles. Destruction Derby, which came off like Fortnite meets Rocket League, was what it said to me, and clearly presented as a game that will definitely have skins available via microtransactions.
Yes, very much so. I think that the twisted metal aspect of the vehicles seems like it's perfect to skin those vehicles up as well. So yes. Yep.
Okay, the next one you want to take that one?
Sure. Kenna Bridge of Spirits is I don't really know who the developer was, and but it's a 3D platformer kind of exploration, really beautiful kind of almost you know, almost like Pixar Pikmin is how I kind of thought of it, right? It's got kind of a Pixar look to it, but you are befriending, controlling a bunch of small creatures who help you manipulate the world as you go through and gain additional powers uh, from what it reads like. So
Yeah,
that was again one that actually was an interest to me, something that looks creatively kind of unique and that was I'm always up for something that doesn't feel like I've played it before.
yeah, I love the voiceover. I didn't get the. I've never played it before. I felt vibes of Ori throughout it in terms of the storytelling. I also had vibes of what was the launch window game on Xbox 360? Was that Cameo?
Yes.
The
Yep.
little girl
Male.
in the green
Yep.
outfit.
It was a rare game. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was
yeah,
male.
yeah.
You're right.
Next up, you had Goodbye, which drops in 2021. Very theatrical, very beautiful, very soulful. I have no idea what that game is.
So as I was reading about it, it sounds like a visual novel. Um, so not a whole lot of action. There's some good storytelling or some potentially good storytelling. Kind of it looks kind of graphic novelty, kind of anthropomorphic dinosaurs and other creatures. Yeah, I mean, again, the variety that they brought to this. So and now we get a little bit of old school with Oddworld as well. So you had I think it was the actual original creator of Oddworld come out, give a little bit of a spiel,
Yeah,
and
Lauren
then
Lanning.
give you yeah, yep, and give you what I thought was kind of a long trailer. So there's a seemingly, I mean, it looks like Oddworld. It's still got some of that kind of puzzle platform exploration pieces. It looks pretty beautiful. Whether or not how big that Oddworld and fan bases. That was an interesting piece.
Yeah, I was pretty excited by the notion of Oddworld. One of the things I've said before that I think I've realized over the last few years is it's not just graphical performance that I thought that really jazzed me up, but it's really the implementation of beautiful art within high graphical performance. And so a high graphic performing game with very lackluster art doesn't really appeal to me. But this game appeared very artistic. Had some really evocative imagery throughout it. So I was pretty excited. I didn't. So this is another thing that it was very difficult to tell throughout this thing, and this is where there's a part of me that's kind of understanding of why it's the way it is, but another part of me that has looked at the E3 loop in years past, and I was like, it's very difficult throughout this event to tell for certain what were exclusives and what were not. So particularly when it comes to like these third party titles. So um,
Yeah, that's hard to. Yeah, I don't know that there was. I mean, if you there's unless it was, that it's owned. I don't know that we can guarantee that anything is exclusive.
right.
Sometimes it did say kind of we got a couple exclusives. We also got some kind of crossover pieces. Like the Goodbye Volcano is going to be also launching on PlayStation 4 as well.
Right.
So
Yeah.
some of the more indie pieces. Uh, yeah, the one other piece, the comment that a friend of mine from World Voyager from the CAG forums back in the day, we were tweeting back and forth during this, and he mentioned Ratchet and Clank, Little Big Planet, and Oddworld. Kind of Sony playing to this older fan base. And in part, kind of the snark comment there is it's the people with enough disposable income to be able to afford whatever the or solid enough jobs to potentially be able to afford what this platform is.
Right, right. So, man, almost hate to say this. So it's gonna be very interesting as both consoles walk up to their release dates. I apologize for saying it, but the reality is, unfortunately, the the people who currently, I'm saying this carefully in case it changes tomorrow, the people who currently have maintained their socioeconomic status for the most part are the people who are capable of doing their jobs remotely. So if you relatively have not been impacted by the lockdowns and the quarantines, I mean, those are the people that Sony and Microsoft have to play to even more so than they have in the past, right? So World Voyager's comment is spot on. You play to the people with disposable income, which the reality is that's not until you're in your like late 20s, early 30s, and really bringing in enough money to kind of spend it on things you want, and not just pay bills. Um, so it'll be interesting to see how the year goes on. I felt that package of three games was more so them playing towards. I don't want to call them the casuals, but the people who are not like super sweats and not ultra competitive and like to come home and kick their feet up on the ottoman and play, some games that are not shooty pew pew, in your face. Not to say that they're not challenged, but they have a
Yeah.
very pleasing artistic presentation.
Well, and they're franchises that they may have played as kids, right?
Yep,
Like they can come back to now.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Yep. Very
Uh,
much so.
so let's talk about a new-ish IP that I have been super excited about since the first time that we saw it. Now, help me out. Did we? Was it the first time we saw this two E3s ago?
So no, this is I think this was last
This
E3
is
because this
2019.
is the One of the developers on the game, she came out, was very
Yep.
enthusiastic, got a lot of social media presence. Has since moved on from the company, but even at that time, I don't think we got actual gameplay. We
We
just kind of got concept.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely saw in-game assets, right? We definitely saw, I need to go back and look at the footage. I mean, we definitely saw footage. I felt like the presentation here was different than, what we thought we saw last time. Again, that's a feeling. I haven't had a chance to go back and look at the footage. That all being said, so it's yes, it's that was one of those social media darlings who like took the stage and immediately won everybody over, and then moved on from the game before it was complete. So the new director had big shoes to fill in terms of presentation. He did a fine job, but he was first up to bat. Um, what I can't remember is this Platinum Games?
Oh, I think this is the developer who did the Evil Within.
Okay, all right, all
Um,
right.
yep. So there's some kind of horror chops here. It looks a little kind of horror sci-fi. It feels, the name fits very well with kind of some of the almost kind of feeling back to like Ringu and other kind of Japanese horror as well.
Yeah. Uh, what I wrote down is the game looks it feels a little bit different than what I felt I saw last time. It's still great. It's still awesome. It's still, um, it feels like it's a little bit of fear. If you remember that game, it's awesome.
So I'm going to take the next one
Yeah,
because
go
the
ahead.
next one I'm excited about is the next game from Super Brothers. So Super Brothers is the sword and sorcery guys, indie developers, uh, you know, interesting kind of environmental storytelling. Jet the Far Shore looks like uh, almost like a uh, No Man's Sky meets some type of Lost in Space kind of post-apocalyptic. Like they're leaving a planet because it's failing. We don't know. We see we see a timer kick off a number of years. We see them kind of uh, uh, we see a spaceship kind of moving throughout environments. We don't necessarily see a whole lot more than that, so potentially that is the game itself is kind of uh, flying through those environments and maybe exploring some things. It's hard to tell, but it's coming out this fall, both on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. So creatively, again, going back to your statement of it doesn't necessarily have to have jaw-dropping graphics as if it has good art design, and this definitely, to me, felt like some pretty nice art design.
Yeah, one developer slash publisher whose name I did not expect to see, at least not in this particular garb, was Gearbox, who presented a game who I will say seems like it seemed like what do you call them, the Musu games? It came off looking a little bit like Dynasty Warriors. I don't think
Yeah,
that's
yep.
what it is. But it definitely felt like Destiny 2 meets God of War meets Warframe meets Assassin's Creed. And mix those all together, you get the game called Godfall. It's a holiday 2020 game. This was one of the weird ones that I definitely stuck out. That said, this is third party. Like, there's there was no Xbox symbology on the screen. So my guess is that this is a timed exclusive. I have a really difficult time with imagining Gearbox doing an exclusive game for a platform. Um,
So this was the one that came out at the Game Awards. This was the first kind of named next gen. They named PlayStation 5 at the end of their trailer at the Game Awards or the reveal. And so I guess it kind of makes sense. Again, this is the first time we see gameplay, but yeah, it feels pretty iterative. I mean, shiny, but it doesn't. Again, going back to that idea of what this console can do other than spruce up the graphics, it doesn't seem like it's doing anything different than what we've experienced before.
but once again, definitely saw the room and the space and the intention for microtransactions around armor and weapons. So get your credit card ready to register to your Gearbox account. You want to talk about the next one?
Sure. Next one, another indie one, Solar Ash, coming out in 2021. Looks like kind of puzzle platformer esque, almost kind of journey and but almost with some gravity puzzles, like Gravity Rush. You've got some quick movement dashes, very kind of stylized graphics, but with kind of playing with gravity 3D spaces. So it could be really interesting. Uh, 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 it seems very much in that kind of Sony art house, kind of indie development vein.
So then one that really got me pumped up was again it was a kind of sneaker reveal because the symbology came up IOI branding, which maybe not everybody is familiar with because it feels relatively new since they walked off to independence. But IOI is IO Interactive, and it was Hitman 3, which is gorgeously presented with scenes in the woods and a whole menagerie of caricatures throughout. Seems like a lot more deeply woven story than maybe you're accustomed to in the Hitman 3 kind of set piece presentation. So they did say that this will be the conclusion of the Assassin trilogy, which maybe this is it for Hitman, or maybe this is kind of like an MCU kind of thing um, where there are chapters and phases, and then you move on to like the next arc, but it's still the same set of characters. So very interesting to see this pull off. I definitely liked Hitman 2 on Xbox. So I'd be curious. Again, I'm curious to see whether or not this is an exclusive or timed exclusive for the platforms.
Yeah, it may be an exclusive reveal. I would be shocked if it was an exclusive at all, because as an indie, I mean, not as a, but as an independent studio, Hitman 2 has gone on everything, PC and both console platforms. So the next game, Astro's Playroom. This is Astrobot. These were the Sony Playroom little robots that helped demo a bunch of different aspects of the PlayStation 4 last generation, and it looks like they're going to do the same thing here. It is a small little game. I don't know if it's going to be a pack-in or a budget price, but it is describing itself as playing around and experimenting with the controls and the capabilities of the DualSense controller. So we'll get some different pieces here. Otherwise, what it really looked like was just another kind of not just another, but it looked like another 3D platformer. Again, going back into that kind of something for the whole family aspect.
So next up, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. NB2K 2K21 was presented. It was their first reveal. Looks like it has a bunch of graphic stuff. Again, get your card ready because I'm sure it's going to be dripping with microtransactions. I'm going to go ahead and bust ahead quickly also through Bug Snacks, which it's a game. Again, I would package it in.
I
No,
think
go ahead.
it looks like the Muppet. I mean, they almost look like Muppet designs. The characters, the big eyes, the mouths. What it actually is a game, but it's by the makers of Octodad. It is launching both on PlayStation 4 and 5 this year, so we'll know more soon.
We'll go ahead and stay on the mic and talk about Demon Souls.
Sure, it's Demon Souls. It's a totally from the ground up remake. It looks like it's not just a remaster. It looks beautiful. It is. Yeah, I mean, it was interesting to see Shohei Yoshida come out and that this is the game that he introduces. Says something about kind of the weight that Sony's putting behind it, or the fact that the acknowledgement of the fan base that the Souls franchise has built up since the original Demon Souls launched way back on early in PlayStation 3.
No doubt. Now, here's next up was a studio who is near and dear to my heart. I really love these guys, Arcane Studios. Now, Arcane Studios is a little different because I believe that one of their principal designers and I think maybe one of their principal writers took off and started a studio of their own, but they still have that DNA woven deep. They are the ones who are going to be taking charge of Deathloop. Now, was this so? This was another E3 2019 game. I distinctly remember the conversation about us not understanding what this game was or how it would play, and being hyper concerned about like exactly how they were going to pull it off. And of course, since then you've had the Will Smith movie that was thematically similar, which, as I understand, was pretty horrible. So, but I think what we saw today was a good representation of what to expect, which is you play a character, you are dropped onto an island. Everybody on the island is out for you, and when you die, you respawn and play through it all again. Sounds a lot like a video game. So, but what's just like what was the game that we talked about earlier? Was it Project Athia?
No, it was Renatural.
Yes, Returnal. So just like that game, you unlock a little bit of the mystery each time you play through. It'll be interesting if it's kind of like a roguelike. Both of these games where you play through and then like when you get killed, it's kind of game over, but you start over again. And the theory is that each time you play through, you progress a little further. And exactly not exactly sure what mechanic they would put in place to make that happen, but I could see where I don't know, you don't go back to the very beginning, or you get maybe a little bit of buff of health, or something to that effect. But I'm very excited. My thing is I've been looking for a sequel to Prey. I was a fan of the Dishonored games, not so much as Prey, but I've been really looking for a sequel to one game or the other, and it seems like Deathloop is going to be the spiritual successor to those. So I'm very curious to see how this turns out for Arcane Studios.
I like the grindhouse aesthetic to it. I mean, it
Yeah.
had kind of a neat aesthetic, the kind of frenetic combat pace that it looked like. And from what I was reading about it, it lists it coming out for PS5 and PC, so no
Okay.
listing of Series X.
Okay. And of course, this was probably one of the biggest reveals um, during the show. You want to talk a little bit about Capcom's new game?
Sure, yeah, we got the confirmation that the rumors are true. Resident Evil 8 exists and it has werewolves. It was aesthetically, it looks kind of, a little bit of Resident Evil 7 mashed up with Castlevania. It feels kind of gothic in some senses, maybe a little bit of time hopping because it feels like, maybe there's some flashbacks in there. Um, but it looks beautiful. It's coming from that same first person perspective that Resident Evil 7 was in. Which to me was very effective in creating kind of an atmosphere and a sense of complete tension at times. So it looks like it could be successful following in that model.
Yeah, and of course, as far as I could tell, you have the return of Chris Redfield at the end. So
Yes, that's what I thank you. I wasn't I thought I caught like him saying Chris and then some action happens, but I was not sure.
yeah.
So yep.
So then we had a Pragmata, which comes out in 2022. I didn't see who the developer was
It's a
named on this.
Capcom game. Yep.
Okay, all right. Um, Looked interesting. Was about the only thing I could say about it.
Yeah, right. I mean, it looks like a concept video. It is. It could be very interesting, but it's all kind of pre-rendered stuff, or at least rendered in engine, not necessarily the gameplay.
Okay. So why don't you take us out with a discussion of the last game, which is the game that I feel proudest of. Not from any personal involvement, but just in terms of like the evolution of a studio and where they've come from, and kind of the space that they now occupy within the Sony ecosystem.
Sure, right. And the former head of Guerrilla Games is now the head of PlayStation Games. And so yes, this is Horizon 2 Forbidden West. All right, we had the leak, the rumor that Horizon Zero Dawn 2 was coming. It's not a surprise. This was a highly successful game from 2017. So it's been a while. Um, and it is it was beautiful then. My word, it looks beautiful now. We get some underwater stuff. We get a lot more kind of visual aspects. It seemed to provide a sense of scale. It was a good kind of, it was either going to be kind of their opener or their closer, and I think it was effective in showing some of the graphic capabilities of the PlayStation. Very beautiful. um, I enjoyed the first game. Really love the storytelling of it. I'm glad that franchise. I think the Aloy character was very well developed. So it's good to see Gorilla kind of getting, finding a groove, getting a chance to see some critical and commercial success.
Yeah, the things I liked about this trailer is it was not all cookie cutter, right? It was, I mean, it would have been very easy, kind of like I often talk about the Matrix, making the Matrix so it would have been very easy to make it all about bullet time and being inside the Matrix. They made a creative choice to not do that. And I feel like the same thing here. Like it would have been very easy for them to capitalize on the hype and make it all about mechanical beasts. But that is not what was presented in the trailer. Was not mechanical Beastosaurus Palooza. They showed a lot of organics actually. Was kind of what opened at the beginning of the trailer. Showed Aloy in new environments underwater. Was one of her big things. And I thought that was really interesting. But seeing her kind of and Guerrilla Games kind of grow up into becoming like a PlayStation mascot and heralding the entrance of the PlayStation 5 and being given like this was their flagship title, right? It ended the show. So I mean it is big as they are propping it up to be as big as Uncharted has been in the past. And that's a big deal.
I
Um,
love the kind of visual nods, the visual language that they play with in the beginning of that trailer, because you see the broken ship and you see the broken plane. Both are aesthetically, callbacks to Uncharted uh, at different points in that franchise.
yeah, yeah. So it's pretty exciting. Again, this is a game that makes me kind of reconsider and potentially miss not being part of the PlayStation um, power system. So we skipped over. I mean, we talked a little bit about Pragmata, but now Pragmata was the one with the guy in like the armor suit who ran the scan and like the little girl appeared or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, super interesting. Very interesting to see how the game comes out. Did you? I mean, you may have mentioned it before. I may have asked you already. Who did we catch who the developer was on that?
Yeah, that's a Capcom
Okay. All right.
game.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
I think the only one we missed is the Little Devil Inside, which looked like
Yeah.
that kind of adventure game, kind of almost like a paper animation. Um, we don't know much more except very kind of artistic aesthetic.
Really liked it. Just in terms of its highly variated gameplay. Like it showed like a lot of different kind of modes or styles. It looked like you might be taking. I mean, there was clearly a protagonist in the game, but it looked like there were maybe opportunities for you to take charge of other characters as well. So that'll be interesting to see. So that was the whole show. My feelings overall, um, it was a really good show for the world as it is now. Um, it is it I, I wouldn't have been happy about this a year ago. I've never been a big fan of the whole Sony sizzle reel approach. Um, with limited or no dialogue from any of the creators or developers. But I will say, they are good at it. It may not be what everybody wants, but they really kind of honed it in. This was actually a really good presentation for a launch year. Also very much bothered by no price or release date. I get the release date. A little bit chapped about the price. Now again, they might be waiting to see how the economy or if the economy's worldwide economy recovers, and may selectively be choosing to pick their price points later. So that would be an acceptable explanation. But just holding it in their pocket just for the sake of like spectacularism, like I don't understand that. And at the end of the day, again, I have always railed against the big opinion of like everybody saying Sony won. The past E3s, particularly the last 2 years, I felt like they were not as good as the Xbox presentations. But I do have to say this one was more polished than its equivalent Xbox presentation. Any specific feelings you had about its
Well,
overall evaluation?
yeah, I'll just say that I don't know that we've seen its equivalent Xbox presentation yet, because that's what's coming in July. Certainly what we don't need to revisit the Xbox presentation from a couple of weeks ago. That wasn't really much of that left a lot of people disappointed. I think really the July one is now they're going to have to up the ante. I was not expecting to care as much about this platform as I did by the end of this hour, or the 70 minutes. That there's a lot of stuff here, some of the same things that got me excited about the last generation. It was 2015 when uh, No Man's Sky, when Horizon first came out. Both of those games really kind of knocked my socks off, looked really interesting. And to see something like Jet, which looks like it aesthetically similar, and to see some of these come, to have some of those franchises from Insomniac come back. A lot here. I was honestly, I was not expecting the council. I thought the council could have been a different one. I was pleased to see it, and so I think because my expectations were lower, I'm coming away a little more bullish on this because of like, hey, this is they're like we talked about at the beginning. They're taking a very a specific intentional aesthetic design. This is not just another black box from Sony, and they're trying to make a statement with it. And I think that they were relatively successful. I mean, they certainly were more successful than last year of their kind of here's the four games we have and that's all we're going to show you type of thing. It was effective in that kind of Nintendo Direct kind of quick hits from one spot to another.
Yeah, that all being said, I hope we saw the front panel, which has a USB port and I believe a USB C port. So I should say USB A and USB C. We didn't see the back panel at all. Um, Again, I was flabbergasted recently this year because I never really put it together. But like the PlayStation 4 launched with no USB ports on the back, which is just criminal to me. So hopefully they've rectified that from a design perspective. The weirdness of the design and the super new age waviness leaves me with not being clear, like just not being even being able to imagine what they would release for a mid-cycle iteration, right? So they always go to like the slim form factor halfway through ish, and I'm like, how do you shrink that thing? Like it's just it's definitely a unique presentation. And I'm curious to see those who it sits well with and those who it don't, those who it doesn't. Of course, the aesthetic shape of the console, people always make a big to do out of that, claiming that they're not going to buy it just because of how it looks, and I always find that very suspect. So,
Yeah, it,
um,
it usually ends up on somebody's shelf anyways, because
right,
it's ultimately the games that get you.
right. So, do you want to do a quick rundown of IGN Summer of Games? Is there anything there that particularly stands out that you want to quickly run through?
Uh, I guess we could. Not anything huge. I think a lot of, I mean, the last 2 days of the IGN rundown really feel like they would have been the show floor for for E3. I mean, these are a lot of kind of smaller development studios. They are things that are they're kind of creative. They're not big franchises. They're not big follow-ups. I mean, we did get a Yakuza, uh, so that certainly is a growing franchise. We also get kind of some creative things like Rustler, the Grand Theft Auto medieval horse game, and we get Metal Hellslinger, which is like uh, you know a rhythm game with a first person shooter kind of hellscape aspect to it. So there's today they had some additional ones. You know, we get some remakes, we get some RPGs, we get some, I think it is something that is it's hard to say because again, getting whether or not we get release dates on everything, but the one thing that I appreciated and liked out of the last 2 days of the IGN stuff is that some of the stuff is coming this month, right? We got Beyond Blue, which was kind of made by and inspired by Blue Planet, the kind of Discovery series or the BBC series. Um, Waylanders, RPG, kind of classic RPG, character RPG, is coming out early access next week. So there's some things that are coming right away, along with stuff that's coming this fall. So it feels like it's stuff that would have gotten kind of in a summary sizzle reel in previous E3. So it gives a little bit of time for things to shine on stages where they might not have been able to.
Okay, but no major big AAA sequel type title, right? That
Not that
anchors
I've
the
nothing
industry.
that really shakes the trees. No.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for us for this week. Anything else that you want to go over?
No, thanks for leading the charge. We got through a lot, and there's more to come.
Okay, so let's quickly run through the walkout. Next Picks Plays next week. Next week is a GX show hosted by DBq with myself, and hopefully Swiss will be back co-hosting. He had a little bit of a personal matter that he had to take care of, so I hope all is well with he and his family. His thoughts and prayers are with us, and hopefully he will be back to get into his co-host seat again next week. The next Picks Plays assignment. Here's the ad copy. Audio in games has always fought the uphill battle of being more than a commodity among the other factors in recognizable game design. Gamers just tend not to notice or be vocal about the sound design, but could you imagine Resident Evil 2 Remake without the atmosphere created by the audio, or missing the footsteps in Fortnite? The sweeping scores in The Witcher 3, the sounds of shots fired in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Take some time to sit back and enjoy some of the best gaming audio that you want to heap praise on. I have been playing Gears of War Ultimate Edition for PC, and it has been a pretty wonderful audio experience. There are some very distinctive Gears of War sounds that we'll talk about during that episode. That make it wonderful to revisit that universe. Prime has been playing Star Wars Battlefront 2. And Swiss, I'm not sure if he will get a chance to get around to this one, but his plan was to play through Octopath Traveler. DBQ, any indication of what you'll be playing to hit the audio design there?
Yeah, I think actually I'm gonna go back to I'm gonna go back and take an audio design from a sports game perspective. So I
Okay,
played around with NBA 2K with some headphones on to get kind of
nice.
the sound aspect to and the same thing I'm gonna do with MLB The Show, again to see kind of how those kind of real life sounds get captured in sports games.
Okay, very cool. All right, thanks a lot so much, everybody who came through the live stream tonight. We appreciate you. Thank you very much for those of you who are watching the archive version of this video on the YouTube channel E2KG Network on YouTube. We appreciate you as well. More often than not, we will be live on this channel, my channel, the Game Logic channel on Twitch. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe out there, play the games that you like, and stream the games that you love. Once again, my name has been Agasicles and DBq from the Rounding Off Infinity Gaming channel on YouTube, the E2KG Network podcasting channel on YouTube, aka Game Logic on Twitch, here with DBQ Hams, together, and with our two other cohorts in crime, we make up the E2KG Network. As always, each week we will be enough for you to keep going. Until next time, good night, good luck, and good gaming. That's going to do it for us. We're out of here.